You know, when you think of April Fool's Day, you probably think of harmless stuff, right? Whoopee cushions, plastic wrap on the toilet, things you can laugh about later. But history has these darker moments. Moments where the line between a good-natured joke and an absolute tragedy gets completely erased.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How far is too far? It sounds so simple, but the answer, well, it's not. Today we're going to explore that very line by digging into 3 true stories where an April Fool's joke took a truly horrifying turn. Let's get into it.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're gonna start way back in the 19th century with a prank call that ended in actual bloodshed. Then we'll jump to a family's absolute worst nightmare on April 1st, and we'll wrap up with a workplace joke that puts someone in a coma. Okay, our first story. Picture this, a group of friends just messing around, making prank calls. It's a classic setup, we've all probably done it. But their final target of the night? That turned out to be a catastrophic mistake.
That right there, that was the chilling threat they got from their target, a physician named Dr. Mosley who is known for having a seriously short fuse. And as they were about to find out, this was not an empty threat. It was a promise. So, how did we get here?
Well, you know how these things escalate. The pranksters started small, calling their own parents, some old friends. But as the night wore on, they got bolder, moving on to riskier targets until they finally landed on the one person in town you just did not want to mess with. Dr. Mosley. The prank they pulled was, well, it was completely absurd. They called his office, faking an emergency, claiming some guy had a very unfortunate and very personal accident with a meat tenderizer. The doctor, actually believing it was real, was absolutely furious when he realized he'd been tricked.
So Tom Rogers, the main guy making the calls, he just laughed it off at first. He ignored the doctor's rage-filled messages, one after another. But then he finally picked up and heard those 4 terrifying words. The joke wasn't on the phone anymore. It was literally at his front door.
So Tom peeks through his peephole and sees the doctor at the end of the hall, just smiling and holding a knife. It's straight out of a horror movie. In a total fit of rage, Dr. Mosley just smashes through the door, trapping this terrified kid in the corner. It's an absolute nightmare.
And this is where the story you think you know just completely flips. That animated tale we just walked through, it's based on a true story. But the real event, which happened in Kaufman, Texas, way back in 1886, well, it didn't end on a cliffhanger.
The reality was a lot more grim. The real Dr. Mosley was tricked into riding this horse 3 miles into the country for a totally fake medical call. When he found out, he was enraged, and he hunted down the real Tom Rogers. There was no chase, no smashed door. Mosley just attacked Rogers with a knife and stabbed him over and over and over until he was dead. All because of a prank call.
Okay, let's move on. Our next case also takes place on April 1st, but much more recently, in 1999. Now, to be clear, this story isn't about a prank that went wrong. It's about a horrific crime that just happened to occur on April Fool's Day. And that coincidence just added a whole other layer of tragedy to what happened next.
Those were the only words a little boy named Preston could say. He just kept repeating them to his grandmother when she showed up at his house. She was just stopping by to drop off a casserole, take him to school, but she walked into something absolutely unimaginable.
She found her daughter, Yvonne, dead. She'd been murdered and decapitated. Her head was in the backyard, her body was in the kitchen, and her young children, including Preston, had been there in the house the entire time.
And what followed was just a complete and total breakdown of the justice system. The crime scene was immediately contaminated by police, neighbors, even dogs running through it. Potential evidence was just destroyed. The police didn't collect any fingerprints, no DNA, and they immediately zeroed in on one single suspect without looking at anyone else.
So here's the thing. On paper, this case is closed. Yvonne's ex-boyfriend, a guy named David Thorne, was convicted and is serving life without parole. But, and this is a huge but, because of how badly the investigation was handled, Yvonne's own mother doubts the verdict. She's been haunted for over 2 decades by the possibility that the real killer is still out there, and an innocent man is locked up.
All right, for our last story, we're heading to a late-night shift at a Waffle House in Georgia. This is where a server's idea of a funny April Fool's joke went so far beyond a prank that it became a major crime.
So the server was named Sanseria Dawn Evans, but everyone called her Dawn. And Dawn had a history of really disturbing behavior that she would always just pass off as a joke.
I'm talking about stuff like throwing dead rats, spitting on people, starting fires in closets, and even spreading horrible rumors accusing a coworker of something truly awful. She was known for being completely manic and, frankly, dangerous.
So on this specific April Fool's Day, she was apparently even more erratic than usual. She kept trying to get her coworker to start a fire with her, to break things, and when he stepped outside to have a smoke, she saw her chance to pull her biggest prank yet.
And you can see exactly how it went down. The restaurant security camera caught the whole thing. It shows her grab her coworker's cup, walk off towards the bathroom, come back and put the cup right back where it was. He comes back inside, finishes his drink, and not even an hour later, he just collapses on the floor. And he didn't just collapse, he fell into a coma that went on for months. Doctors figured out why. He had ingested a massive, almost fatal overdose of methamphetamine. That was the white powder Don put in his drink.
And her reason for nearly killing him? This is what she said. It was just an April Fool's joke. Something to get him to lighten up. Her coworker did survive, but he has permanent physical and mental damage. Don was arrested and charged with aggravated battery.
So after hearing these three stories, it's pretty obvious the punchline to any of these so-called jokes was anything but funny. The consequences were real, they were permanent, and they were absolutely devastating.
Let's recap. A man was murdered over a dumb prank call. A family was completely torn apart by a horrific crime, and because it happened on April 1st and the investigation was so bad, they're left with doubt instead of justice. And another man's life is forever changed because his coworker thought poisoning him would be hilarious.
And that brings us right back to our original question. A joke is supposed to be shared, right? It's something everyone should be able to laugh at after the fact. But when the laughter stops and all that's left are real, life-altering consequences, well, it's not a prank anymore. It's a tragedy. So the question we all have to think about is, where exactly is that line? And how do we make absolutely sure we never, ever cross it?